The plane slammed into the dense jungle, twisting metal and shattering glass everywhere. We stumbled out, shaken into an island no map dared to show. Thick fog hung over towering trees. Strange sounds echoed in the distance, and a feeling of being watched crawled over our skin. Every step we took seemed to draw us deeper into a place that didn't want visitors. Survival wasn't just a hope, it was a battle against the unknown lurking in the shadows of this forbidden land. The sky had been deceptively calm when we boarded the small plane, the clouds glowing softly as if nothing could go wrong. Laughter and casual conversation filled the cabin, masking the tension that sometimes lingers before takeoff. In hindsight, every sign we overlooked, the faint rumble in the engines, the odd silence of the co-pilot, was a warning. The plane climbed steadily, cutting through the thickening clouds, carrying us toward an island that appeared like a green shadow on the horizon. No one aboard knew what lay ahead, and none could imagine the chaos that would soon consume us. That first stretch of serenity was the calm before the storm. It began with a sudden jolt, subtle at first, almost dismissible. Then came the roar, deafening and relentless, vibrating through the metal frame and rattling every bone. Passengers screamed, straps pulling at our torsos as the plane shuddered violently. The pilot fought the controls, his face pale and taut with fear, but the machine was no longer obeying human command. Windows cracked under the stress, and sheets of rain began to pelt against the fuselage. Time slowed as panic became a tangible, suffocating presence. Smoke crept along the cabin ceiling, curling ominously toward the passengers, filling the air with a bitter, choking scent. Hearts raced, eyes darted, and hands grasped for anything to cling to as the plane pitched and twisted. A lone overhead light flickered weakly, casting grotesque shadows across faces twisted in terror. The island below, once distant, now loomed with terrifying clarity, jagged cliffs and thick forests, beckoning us toward an unknown fate. Every instinct screamed that survival would demand more than courage. It would demand ingenuity and raw willpower. The impact hit with a force that stole the breath from our lungs, and metal crumpled like paper against the trees. Branches tore through the fuselage, glass shattered, and the plane skidding to a final, shuddering halt on uneven ground. Silence followed, broken only by the groans of the injured and the distant, eerie sounds of the island itself. We stumbled out, trembling, our eyes adjusting to the dense jungle that rose around us like walls of green. The crash had ended, but nothing felt safe, and the world we knew had been left far behind. The first moments after the crash were a blur of adrenaline and fear. Some passengers were injured, others in shock, but all shared the same growing realization: we were stranded. Every sound from the jungle seemed amplified, every rustle a possible threat. The canopy above blocked much of the light, and the air was thick, humid, and heavy with the scent of moss and decay. What had looked like a small, harmless island on the map now appeared as a living, breathing enigma. Survival would not be straightforward. We gathered whatever we could from the wreckage: water bottles, a few medical kits, and scraps of food. But it felt meaningless against the vastness of the forest. Every direction seemed identical. Endless green walls hiding secrets we couldn't yet see. The faint calls of birds and insects provided a hollow comfort, a reminder that life existed here, but not necessarily human life. Our group moved cautiously, knowing the island was unfamiliar and the terrain treacherous. The sense of being watched was palpable, though no one admitted it at first. Night fell quickly under the thick canopy, shadows stretching like long fingers across the ground. We built a makeshift shelter, huddling together for warmth and reassurance, but every sound from the darkness caused hearts to race. The wind carried strange whispers, or perhaps they were just echoes of our own fear. Every crack of a branch or flutter of wings became a potential menace. Sleep was impossible. The island demanded alertness and vigilance. Our minds raced as we realized this crash was only the beginning of an ordeal. By dawn, the reality of our situation became undeniable. The plane was beyond salvage, and the island held no clear paths or landmarks. Food and water were scarce, and we quickly understood that survival required exploration, ingenuity, and teamwork. Each step deeper into the jungle revealed strange markings on trees. footprints that didn't match any human form, and sounds that suggested we were far from alone. Fear mixed with awe as the island revealed its mysterious nature, threatening yet captivating. We began to organize ourselves, assigning tasks and establishing routines, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. Arguments flared, exhaustion took its toll, and the fear of the unknown grew with every passing hour. Some wanted to stay near the wreckage, hoping for rescue, while others insisted we explore and find a safer place. The island seemed to test us, daring us to make mistakes, punishing hesitation. Survival demanded more than instinct. It demanded courage under pressure. As we pushed further, we discovered signs that the island had been inhabited long before us. Strange structures, half swallowed by vines and the remnants of fires, suggested previous visitors, or perhaps something else. The feeling of being watched intensified, shadows moving just beyond sight, whispers of wind carrying unnatural echoes. Every discovery heightened our paranoia and fascination. The island was alive in a way that made clear it held secrets far older than we could imagine. Days passed in a mix of discovery and terror. Hunger and fatigue became constants, forcing us to make desperate choices. Every night the darkness pressed in, and we learned that even small noises could provoke unimaginable fear. Yet, amid the chaos, bonds were formed. People who barely knew each other became indispensable allies. Survival was no longer an abstract concept. It was a constant negotiation between the island's dangers and our own resilience. The island seemed to adapt to us, shifting paths, hiding resources, and revealing dangers unpredictably. Every step forward was an exercise in careful observation and decision-making. A simple misstep could mean injury, or worse, drawing attention to whatever lurked unseen. Our understanding of the jungle grew, but so did our fear of it. The knowledge that we were intruding into something ancient made every encounter feel like a warning. Despite the terror, moments of breathtaking beauty appeared. Sunlight breaking through the canopy, strange flowers glowing in hidden clearings, and waterfalls cascading into unseen pools. These glimpses of wonder reminded us that the island was more than a threat. It was alive, complex, and enigmatic. But even in beauty, danger lingered. The juxtaposition of awe and fear became the rhythm of each day. By the final days of our ordeal, exhaustion had become a constant companion. Our bodies were battered, our minds frayed, and hope felt fragile. Yet, in those moments, the true test of character emerged. Courage, ingenuity, and trust became more valuable than any tools or supplies. We had survived the crash, but survival here meant understanding the island, respecting its power, and confronting the fear it inspired. When rescue finally arrived, the island loomed behind us like a silent sentinel. Some of us rejoiced, others felt a pang of loss for a place that had tested them in ways nothing else could. The crash had changed everything. Our perspective, our priorities, and the understanding of how fragile life can be. We had entered as passengers and left as survivors, forever marked by the island that refused to be forgotten. Stepping away from the wreckage, the jungle swallowed us immediately, thick and impenetrable. The canopy above blocked most of the sunlight, leaving a dim green haze that distorted distances and shapes. Every step was uncertain. Roots twisted across the ground like serpents, and unseen creatures rustled in the shadows. The air was heavy with humidity, earthy scents, and an unshakable feeling that something was observing our every move. Words of comfort were scarce, replaced by silent glances and quickened breathing. The unknown stretched before us, both terrifying and mesmerizing. Paths appeared, then vanished, as if the forest itself was shifting to confuse intruders. We followed faint signs, broken branches, animal tracks, but each discovery only deepened the sense that we were not alone. Strange calls echoed in the distance, unidentifiable and haunting, reverberating through the thick undergrowth. Occasionally, a shaft of sunlight broke through the leaves, illuminating glimpses of peculiar flora that seemed almost unreal. The jungle was alive, breathing, and aware, and our every step felt like a trespass into its ancient domain. The further we ventured, the denser the foliage became. Vines hung like ropes from towering trees, and the ground was littered with decaying leaves that squished underfoot. Our footsteps seemed unnaturally loud, Yet the jungle offered no signs of human presence other than our own. In the distance, the sound of rushing water hinted at a river or waterfall, but the thick mist obscured the view. Each sound, each movement, forced our senses into overdrive. The unknown demanded attention, and curiosity mingled with fear. An eerie stillness occasionally settled over the forest, broken only by a distant screech or the sudden snap of a branch. These moments made our hearts pound harder, as if the jungle itself were exhaling, reminding us that it was the master here. Some members of our group whispered theories about what might inhabit these shadows, some human, some far stranger. Yet no one dared speak too loudly, lest the very act of sound provoke an unseen presence. Every rustle, every fleeting shadow became a test of courage and perception. We discovered strange markings on trees, deep gashes, and carved symbols unlike anything we had seen before. Some resembled warnings, others seemed ritualistic, left by hands long gone or creatures beyond imagination. Our group debated whether these signs were protective or predatory, but no consensus emerged. The markings heightened the sense that we were walking into a territory that had rules we did not understand. Fear became a constant companion, yet so did fascination, drawing us deeper into the heart of the unknown. Water sources were scarce, and every stream or puddle required careful inspection. The jungle was deceptive. What appeared safe could conceal sharp rocks, hidden creatures, or poisonous plants. Survival demanded vigilance, and even the simplest act, drinking, walking, resting, carried risk. Each misstep, each careless glance, felt as if it might awaken the forest's hidden guardians. The unknown was not merely a place, it was a force that demanded respect, demanding that we prove ourselves worthy of its secrets. At night, the jungle transformed entirely. Shadows lengthened and shifted, sounds became sharper, and every insect, buzz, or distant howl carried ominous weight. Fires offered limited comfort, their light barely penetrating the darkness. Sleep was impossible without one eye open, and even then, nightmares followed, blending reality with imagination. Each night in the heart of the unknown was a battle against fear, testing mental endurance as much as physical strength. We encountered strange rock formations and caves, their entrances obscured by thick foliage. Stepping inside these dark hollows required a courage that bordered on recklessness, but the need to explore outweighed hesitation. The air was cooler inside, carrying scents of damp earth and decay, and echoes transformed our footsteps into haunting whispers. Every corner held potential discovery or danger, and the line between the two blurred quickly. The unknown revealed itself slowly, teasing and threatening in equal measure. The deeper we went, the signs of past visitors became more prominent. Tattered clothing, broken tools, and even skeletal remains half buried in moss. It was clear that this jungle had claimed lives before, and the thought that we might be next hung over us like a shadow. Each discovery forced reflection on our vulnerability, and yet it also strengthened our resolve. We pressed on, knowing that turning back was not an option. Survival depended on confronting the mysteries rather than avoiding them. Some sections of the forest were almost surreal, with plants that glowed faintly in the dim light and vines that seemed to move independently. Strange animal cries echoed unnervingly, and the jungle seemed to respond to our presence with subtle shifts in temperature or scent. It became evident that this was a world governed by rules beyond human comprehension. Fear, awe, and curiosity intertwined, driving us to explore further despite the growing peril. Every moment reinforced that the heart of the unknown demanded attention, respect, and adaptability. Our group dynamics began to shift under the strain. Disagreements over direction, strategy, and resource allocation sparked tension. Fear and exhaustion warped perception, turning minor incidents into crises. Yet these challenges also revealed strengths and resilience, forging bonds between those willing to trust and cooperate. The unknown tested more than physical endurance. It tested character, morality, and unity under pressure. We began noticing patterns in the jungle, the way certain sounds preceded danger, the appearance of particular plants near water sources, and the subtle cues that hinted at the presence of creatures larger than us. Observation became a tool for survival, a way to anticipate the unexpected. Slowly, the unknown became slightly more familiar, though no less formidable. Learning to read the jungle's language was key to staying one step ahead of its hidden perils. At one point, we stumbled upon a clearing, bathed in sunlight, almost like a sanctuary in the suffocating jungle. Here, the unknown seemed less threatening, offering a brief reprieve. The air felt lighter, and the sense of being watched diminished, though never entirely vanished. These rare moments provided hope, a reminder that beauty could exist even in the most dangerous places. They also reinforced the idea that the jungle held both peril and wonder, often intertwined in ways impossible to predict. Exploration revealed evidence of intelligence, trails, constructed barriers, and subtle modifications to the environment. Whoever or whatever had been here before was deliberate and strategic. Understanding this intelligence became essential to navigating the heart of the unknown. Every movement required caution, planning, and anticipation of the unpredictable. Survival depended on adaptation, not force, and on respecting that we were intruders in a world older and wiser than ourselves. By the final stretch of our journey through this dense wilderness, exhaustion was a constant shadow. Each step required immense effort, and the weight of uncertainty pressed down on our minds. Yet, despite the fear and fatigue, we had learned, grown, and survived. Moments that would have broken less determined souls. The heart of the unknown had tested us in ways unimaginable, leaving scars, lessons, and memories that would endure far longer than the jungle itself. As we finally approached the edge of the unexplored jungle, the heart of the unknown seemed to recede. Yet its presence lingered like a silent reminder. We had survived, but not untouched. The lessons of vigilance, observation, and respect would remain with us forever. The jungle had allowed us to leave, but only because we had proven ourselves capable of enduring its trials. Into the heart of the unknown, we had walked as outsiders and emerged as survivors marked by the island's eternal mystery. A thick fog rolled in as the sun dipped below the horizon, swallowing the jungle in a gray, shifting haze. Every familiar shape became a silhouette, and the trees seemed taller, more menacing, as if the mist amplified their presence. Our footsteps were muted, absorbed by damp soil, leaving only faint impressions behind. Whispers of wind carried strange sounds, almost like murmurs from unseen beings. The air felt heavier, colder, and our breaths came in short, nervous gasps. Something about this fog seemed alive, as if it were watching, waiting for a misstep. Shadows stretched unnaturally in the mist, some flickering at the edge of vision, impossible to identify. Every movement in the fog caused a spike of adrenaline as shapes shifted before our eyes. The jungle seemed to play tricks on perception, turning fallen branches into looming figures. Eyes strained to detect threats, yet uncertainty gnawed at every step. The fog blurred the line between reality and imagination, and fear became a companion as palpable as any human presence. Silence, when it arrived, was filled with tension rather than peace. A sudden rustle nearby froze us mid-step. Something or someone was moving through the fog with unnatural speed and precision. No calls or noises accompanied it, only the shifting of mist and faint disturbance in the undergrowth. Hearts pounded as the invisible presence circled, testing our nerves, reminding us that the jungle had its own rules. Survival now demanded hyper-awareness, as every shadow could conceal friend, foe, or something far stranger. The unknown had never felt so immediate. We attempted to make sense of the shapes around us, but the fog refused clarity. Twisting vines, broken branches, and uneven terrain created illusions of movement that toyed with the mind. Each misjudged step risked injury, or worse, attracting the attention of whatever lurked unseen. Our senses sharpened to detect subtle anomalies, a flicker of movement, a change in the wind, a whisper that didn't belong. The fog had transformed the familiar into a maze of uncertainty, demanding caution and courage in equal measure. As night deepened, the shadows gained substance. Some figures appeared taller than any human. Others moved with unnatural angles, slipping through the mist effortlessly. There was no sound to betray them, no rustle, no snap, only the eerie certainty of presence. Fear became a tangible weight, pressing on shoulders and lungs alike. Even the strongest among us began to question what could survive in this fog and whether we were truly alone. The jungle had shifted from a setting into an adversary, challenging every instinct. The fog also masked vital paths, turning exploration into a careful balancing act. Every clearing seemed temporary, dissolving into gray obscurity as we approached. Landmarks vanished or reappeared unpredictably, and navigation became as much intuition as observation. We relied on subtle cues, slopes, faint sounds, and the occasional glimpse of the moon to chart our way. Each decision carried risk, and every error could mean entanglement with unseen entities or dangerous terrain. We witnessed strange phenomena that defied explanation. Shadows seemed to move independently, sometimes retreating when approached, other times advancing as if drawn by our presence. Light from flashlights refracted strangely in the mist, casting illusions of figures just beyond reach. Some members of our group swore they saw shapes observing us from the treetops, and the feeling of being followed became impossible to ignore. The fog was no longer a passive backdrop, it had become an active participant in our ordeal. At one point, a sudden scream cut through the gray silence, echoing unnaturally across the fog-draped jungle. Its source was impossible to locate, yet its impact left hearts racing and limbs trembling. Panic rippled through the group, testing cohesion and willpower. Trust and communication became crucial, but the fog seemed determined to isolate, to distort, to test mental endurance. Every decision, every cautious step, carried the weight of uncertainty and fear. We discovered evidence of previous travelers, or perhaps victims, lost to the fog. Tattered clothing clung to roots, broken tools littered the undergrowth, and bones lay half-buried in moss. These signs served as grim reminders that the shadows were not merely illusions. The jungle had claimed lives before, and nothing about the fog suggested mercy. Survival demanded respect for the terrain, vigilance against the invisible, and reliance on instincts honed by terror and necessity. Communication became a struggle. Shouts were swallowed by the mist, voices distorted, and even whispers seemed to carry far beyond expectation. Misinterpretations threatened to separate us, leaving individuals vulnerable to the unseen forces of the forest. Coordination required constant attention, patience, and a willingness to adapt to conditions that challenged every human sense. The fog blurred the lines between reality and imagination, demanding clarity of thought in the face of chaos. We learned that stillness was often safer than movement. Every step risked drawing attention from whatever lurked in the mist, shadows that had seemed harmless when stationary became menacing when approached. Patience became a survival strategy, observation a weapon, and fear a guide rather than a deterrent. The fog taught lessons in humility, caution, and the necessity of trusting instincts over logic alone. Strange lights occasionally pierced the mist, faint glows that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Some were bioluminescent flora or insects. Others seemed too deliberate to be natural. Following them risked disorientation, yet ignoring them could mean missing critical paths or resources. The jungle communicated subtly, teaching the value of perception and the danger of assumptions. Each choice was a negotiation with an environment that was both beautiful and deadly. Encounters with the fog's illusions challenged perception repeatedly. Shadows elongated into monstrous forms, movement seemed impossible, and every sound carried multiple interpretations. The mind struggled to reconcile what it saw with what it knew, producing moments of terror and awe simultaneously. The unknown had layers, and understanding even one layer required humility and acute awareness. Every second in this gray expanse demanded attention, courage, and adaptability. As dawn approached, the fog began to thin slightly, revealing glimpses of terrain previously hidden. Yet even in the light, shadows lingered, and the feeling of being watched persisted. Lessons from the night remained. Vigilance, respect, and observation were paramount. The fog had not only obscured the jungle, it had revealed the limits of human perception and resilience. We emerged changed, aware that some parts of the island resisted understanding and disclosure. By the time we reached a safer clearing, exhaustion was overwhelming, but so was a sense of accomplishment. The shadows had tested us, and we had survived by observing, adapting, and trusting instincts. The fog remained a silent guardian of secrets, refusing to give everything away. Its presence lingered in memory, a reminder of the jungle's hidden dangers and the uncharted mysteries that lay within. Stepping out of the dense mist, we realized the fog had reshaped our understanding of the island. What had seemed merely eerie was purposeful. The shadows were both barrier and guide, danger and teacher. Into the heart of the fog, we had walked unprepared and fearful, and emerged with knowledge, caution, and respect. The shadows would continue to haunt our memories, and the fog would forever mark the journey through the unknown. As darkness settled over the island, we realized that survival was no longer just a hope. It was a desperate necessity. Every shadow seemed to carry threat. Every sound amplified our sense of vulnerability. Hunger gnawed at our stomachs. Exhaustion pulled at our limbs, and the constant uncertainty weighed heavily on our minds. Fear was no longer a fleeting sensation. It had become an unrelenting companion, forcing our thoughts into a tight spiral of caution, strategy, and prayer. Each choice felt like a gamble, and the jungle seemed determined to test our limits. We quickly discovered that fear was both paralyzing and motivating. The unknown lurked at every turn, from the twisted roots of ancient trees to the sudden calls of unseen creatures. Each step required vigilance, yet hesitation could be just as dangerous as reckless movement. The forest did not forgive mistakes, and every error could mean injury, or worse. Survival became an intricate dance between courage and caution, forcing us to confront instincts that had never been tested before. Sleep offered little reprieve. Even when exhaustion pulled our eyes closed, dreams turned into vivid hallucinations of what might lurk nearby. Branches snapping, leaves rustling, and distant howls merged with imagination, making rest a risky endeavor. Our bodies craved recovery, but our minds remained alert, scanning for threats that might appear at any moment. We learned that the line between waking terror and dream-induced panic blurred under constant pressure. Food and water were scarce, and the jungle offered only deceptive abundance. Streams could hide treacherous currents or be contaminated, while fruits and plants appeared safe yet concealed dangers. We scavenged carefully, relying on knowledge, observation, and trial and error to sustain ourselves. Every meal was both nourishment and risk, highlighting the delicate balance between survival and folly. The jungle tested not just strength, but judgment and patience. As days passed, fear transformed from a simple emotion into a tool. Awareness sharpened. Each shadow and sound became data for decision-making. We learned to read subtle cues, changes in air pressure, distant animal movements, or shifting light. As signals of potential danger, survival required adaptation, and those who resisted learning quickly fell behind. Fear, once a paralyzing force, became an instrument for observation and tactical planning. Injuries and fatigue made us painfully aware of vulnerability. Scrapes from jagged rocks, bites from insects, and bruises from falls slowed our progress. Pain reminded us of our fragile human limits and the cost of every mistake. Yet, necessity forced movement, ingenuity, and cooperation. We discovered that fear could be channeled into determination, compelling us to act when instincts screamed to freeze. The unknown was relentless, presenting new threats daily. Strange animal calls echoed in the distance, and fleeting glimpses of movement suggested we were not alone. Every decision carried consequence, from choosing a path to deciding whether to investigate noises in the dark. Survival required constant assessment, risk management, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. The island left no room for error or complacency. Group dynamics became a crucial part of survival. Fear intensified emotions, testing patience, trust, and leadership. Arguments flared over minor decisions, yet cooperation was essential to endure the jungle's challenges. Each individual had a role, and the line between heroism and recklessness became apparent. Learning to rely on one another, even when terrified, was a lesson in humility and resilience. As we explored, we encountered natural traps, quicksand, thorny underbrush, and hidden sinkholes. Each presented a potential end to our struggle, reminding us that danger could emerge from both visible and unseen sources. Fear heightened awareness, forcing meticulous steps and careful assessment. Every obstacle overcame through strategy reinforced that survival was not only about strength, but also intelligence and patience. The psychological toll was immense. Sleep deprivation, hunger, and constant stress led to hallucinations and irrational thoughts. Shadows morphed into threats, and ordinary noises became ominous signals. Maintaining composure became a challenge, and mental endurance proved just as important as physical resilience. Survival demanded the ability to differentiate between imagination and reality while still respecting both. Despite the terror, moments of triumph reminded us why survival mattered. Discovering a safe water source, creating makeshift shelters, and navigating treacherous terrain without incident gave hope. These victories, small but significant, fueled determination and offered glimpses of control in a chaotic environment. Fear remained ever present, but we learned to coexist with it, letting it guide rather than overwhelm us. We encountered remnants of past travelers, long abandoned or lost to the jungle. Their presence was both a warning and a source of insight. Observing their mistakes taught strategies for safety, while contemplating their fates reinforced the stakes. Survival was not only about navigating the present, but also learning from the echoes of the past. Every discovery sharpened our understanding of the island's hidden dangers. Nightfall was the most challenging phase of survival. Darkness amplified fear, shadows lengthened, and sounds became more pronounced. Fire provided limited safety, flickering weakly in the oppressive gloom. The mind conjured threats from every angle, real or imagined, and the uncertainty demanded unyielding vigilance. Survival became a test of mental fortitude as much as physical endurance. We learned that fear could foster innovation. Traps were avoided by keen observation, paths were mapped cautiously, and shelters were built to anticipate danger. Every new solution came from acknowledging vulnerability and responding strategically. Survival required a balance between risk and caution, understanding that miscalculations could be fatal. The island rewarded those who respected its power. As we emerged from one particularly treacherous stretch of jungle, we realized that survival was as much about mindset as resources. Fear had guided, shaped, and refined us. Each decision, each cautious step had been a negotiation with the unknown. Trapped between fear and survival, we had endured, learning that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. The island had tested us, and we had survived. The moment we thought we had gained a rhythm, the island reminded us that we were mere intruders. The wind shifted, carrying unfamiliar scents and strange noises that made our skin crawl. Trees groaned as if alive, branches moving with uncanny precision to block paths or obscure vision. Rocks seemed to shift subtly underfoot, forcing missteps that threatened to sprain ankles or worse. Nature was no longer passive. It had become an active, unpredictable adversary, responding to our presence in ways we couldn't understand. Every step forward was met with resistance. The first clear attack came from the terrain itself. A river that appeared shallow suddenly deepened, its current swift and treacherous, sweeping debris downstream. Crossing it required ingenuity and risk, and even then some of our supplies were lost to the watery grip. Fallen logs became unstable bridges, quicksand lurked near the edges, and slippery rocks offered little support. The island seemed to rearrange itself, creating obstacles that challenged both physical skill and mental acuity. Survival demanded constant adaptation. Wildlife added to the struggle. Venomous snakes and insects appeared in unexpected numbers, their presence a stark reminder that this environment had been shaping life for centuries before us. Predatory birds circled overhead, their cries echoing eerily through the dense canopy. Even creatures we could not see seemed to monitor our movements, responding to every footstep with subtle shifts in sound and motion. The island's defenses were precise, calculated, and merciless. One evening, a sudden storm struck, as if conjured by the island itself. Torrential rain pounded down, lightning illuminated jagged treetops, and thunder shook the earth. Our makeshift shelters offered scant protection, and we were forced to cling together for safety and warmth. The storm revealed how unforgiving this land could be, punishing unpreparedness and testing resolve. By the time it passed, The ground was slick with mud, and our supplies had been scattered, leaving no choice but to improvise. The island's fight was not limited to environmental hazards. Strange sounds, cries, whispers, and footfalls echoed around us at night. We began to suspect that unseen beings or remnants of the island's history were watching, evaluating, and perhaps manipulating our movements. The fog seemed thicker than before, twisting familiar trails into mazes and obscuring landmarks we had relied upon. Every decision felt like walking into a trap, as if the island was shaping our actions to suit its mysterious purpose. Food became harder to find, and the search itself was a test. Poisonous plants mimicked edible ones, while hidden thorns and brambles caused injuries when least expected. Streams that appeared safe sometimes contained sharp rocks, debris, or sudden currents. The island forced ingenuity, compelling us to think creatively under pressure. Hunger became a driving force. But the island refused to make survival easy, demanding alertness and intelligence at every turn. The terrain seemed to fight us directly. Hills steepened, slopes became unstable, and valleys concealed hidden dangers. Paths we had memorized vanished overnight, and familiar landmarks appeared altered. Even the trees seemed to conspire, their branches forming natural barriers or tangling our passage. It was clear that this island was not a static environment. It was adaptive, responsive, and unyielding. Each step forward was a small victory against a relentless adversary. As exhaustion set in, panic threatened to take hold. Members of our group stumbled, slowed by fatigue and injuries, and the island seized these weaknesses with subtle cruelty. Falling rocks, hidden roots, and slippery terrain reminded us that vigilance could never wane. The island seemed to sense hesitation, punishing moments of distraction with swift consequences. We quickly learned that survival required unwavering focus and coordinated effort. The nights were the most dangerous. Darkness amplified the island's presence, and the sounds of unseen creatures intensified. Every snap of a branch, every distant howl, heightened tension and tested nerves. Sleep became a luxury none could afford, and the group relied on rotating watches to maintain safety. The island's fight was continuous, relentless, and psychological as well as physical, leaving no respite for the weary. We discovered natural hazards designed as if for defense. Narrow ledges that gave way under slight pressure, hidden sinkholes, and thorn-covered passages that could easily trap the unwary. The island's architecture was both beautiful and deadly, formed over centuries to challenge intruders. Each encounter reinforced the truth. This was not merely land, it was an intelligent, reactive environment that demanded respect and caution. Even water sources became treacherous. Rivers overflowed unpredictably, currents shifted, and stagnant pools concealed hidden dangers. Crossing or gathering resources required strategy and timing, teaching us to respect the island's rhythm. Every interaction with the environment became a negotiation between survival instincts and the island's unpredictable reactions. The fight was constant and multifaceted, touching every aspect of existence here. The psychological toll became as formidable as the physical one. Fear, uncertainty, and fatigue blurred reality. Shadows seemed to move independently, and every sound was suspect. Hallucinations, whether induced by exhaustion or fear, made it difficult to trust one's own senses. Yet the struggle also forged resilience, forcing adaptation and resourcefulness that would have been unimaginable in ordinary circumstances. We began to notice patterns, subtle cues in the environment that allowed us to anticipate hazards. Fallen leaves, bird calls, and subtle shifts in terrain offered guidance. Recognizing these signals became essential for survival, as ignoring them could result in serious injury. The island's fight became a lesson in observation, patience, and learning to read the landscape as if it were alive. At times, we felt a strange pushback, as if the island were testing not just our survival skills, but our determination. Paths we tried to take seemed deliberately blocked. Shelters were washed away by storms, and food sources appeared and disappeared unpredictably. Each challenge forced creativity, endurance, and unity among the group. We were being shaped by the island's will as much as we were shaping our own survival strategies. After days of relentless struggle, we realized that the island's fight was not personal. It was its nature. Survival meant respecting its power, observing its patterns, and moving with intention. Every obstacle we overcame was a small triumph, yet we understood that the island would continue to assert itself against anyone who dared intrude. It had tested our bodies, minds, and spirits, leaving us stronger, wiser, and acutely aware that nature's fury was never random, but purposeful and precise. The deeper we ventured into the jungle, the more we realized it was alive with mysteries we could barely comprehend. Every turn revealed subtle signs of life that seemed deliberately concealed. Strange markings on trees hinted at unknown rituals, while broken branches suggested movement too calculated to be random. The air was thick with secrets, and even the quietest sounds felt like clues waiting to be deciphered. The wilderness had its own language, and slowly we began to sense its hidden messages. Small caves, tucked between roots and rocks, became the first hints of concealed history. Inside, faint carvings decorated the walls, symbols that suggested previous inhabitants or visitors. Some carvings were geometric, others more abstract, yet all carried the same impression of purpose and warning. The caves offered temporary shelter, but their true value lay in what they revealed about the island's past. Every discovery sparked questions: who had been here, and what had they left behind? Rivers and streams occasionally revealed more than just water. Beneath the surface, we noticed objects partially buried in mud, tools, containers, and fragments of clothing. They hinted at survival attempts long before our arrival, and some were too carefully placed to be natural. These remnants told stories of struggle and desperation, reminding us that the wilderness had claimed lives before. The island's secrets were layered, waiting for those brave or foolish enough to seek them. Plants themselves seemed to conceal mysteries. Some glowed faintly in dim light, while others bore strange patterns that resembled symbols more than natural growth. Edible plants were difficult to distinguish from poisonous ones, teaching us the importance of careful observation and respect for the unknown. Each encounter with flora became both a lesson and a risk, revealing how survival and knowledge were intricately intertwined. The wildlife carried its own enigmas. Unfamiliar calls echoed at night, often coordinated in ways that suggested intelligence beyond instinct. Tracks appeared in unusual arrangements, leaving us to wonder whether unseen creatures were observing or guiding us. Predators stalked silently, yet some animals seemed unafraid, almost as if they were guardians of hidden spaces. The wilderness was full of eyes, ears, and secrets that demanded attention and reverence. We stumbled upon hidden clearings, small sanctuaries isolated from the dense forest. In these places, sunlight broke through the canopy, illuminating the remains of structures long overtaken by nature. Stone foundations and moss-covered walls hinted at communities that once existed, but had vanished without a trace. The air carried a stillness that was both calming and unsettling, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Every detail revealed layers of history and the weight of unspoken stories. Occasionally, we discovered signs that the island's history was not entirely human. Bones arranged in unnatural positions, peculiar rock formations, and areas cleared of vegetation suggested practices or creatures beyond our understanding. These discoveries heightened our sense of caution and curiosity, revealing a wilderness that had long held dominion over its secrets. It demanded respect, yet invited investigation, creating a tension that both fascinated and terrified us. Hidden paths appeared only when we weren't looking directly for them. Narrow trails, faintly trodden, led to resources, shelters, or places of interest. Some seemed natural, while others bore marks of intelligent design. The wilderness guided us subtly, offering rewards to those who observed and punished carelessness. Following these trails became a delicate exercise in perception, testing patience, memory, and courage. The jungle revealed that secrets were never given freely. They had to be earned. Artifacts occasionally emerged from the undergrowth. Tools carved from stone, containers fashioned from shells, and remnants of clothing that had weathered decades. Each object sparked speculation about those who had left them behind. Were they explorers, castaways, or something else entirely? The deeper we went, the clearer it became that the wilderness preserved fragments of history, intentionally hidden, waiting for the curious to interpret. Nighttime in the wilderness heightened the sense of mystery, shadows stretched unnaturally, and even the smallest noises carried weight. The moonlight illuminated strange formations, revealing hidden patterns in leaves, rocks, and water. Every step after dark became an exercise in intuition, as well as courage. The island's secrets seemed more present at night, whispering through the rustling trees and shifting fog, teasing us with glimpses we could not fully comprehend. We discovered areas where natural features appeared manipulated, stones stacked in deliberate arrangements, trees bent unnaturally, and roots woven like fences suggested intelligence and purpose. These subtle signs indicated the wilderness itself had been shaped, at least partially, by those who came before. The island seemed less like untamed land and more like a guardian, carefully controlling access to its hidden chambers. Some clearings contained evidence of ritual or symbolic activity. Patterns drawn in the soil, fire pits with remnants of offerings, and stones etched with mysterious designs hinted at ceremonies or warnings. The air in these spaces felt charged, as if the island retained memories of actions performed centuries ago. Each discovery prompted reflection on the lives, beliefs, and struggles of those who had once interacted with these spaces. The more we explored, the more we realized the wilderness was selective in revealing its secrets. Some areas were entirely closed off, dense with vegetation and nearly impossible to penetrate. Others seemed to open only when approached with caution and observation. The island demanded respect, patience, and intelligence to reveal its hidden truths, teaching lessons through challenge rather than instruction. We encountered natural traps that seemed deliberately positioned to obscure passage, deep holes covered by foliage, thorny vines arranged to deter movement, and unstable slopes challenged navigation. These hazards were not random. They were protective measures that suggested awareness and intelligence. The wilderness fought against the unprepared, reinforcing the need for attentiveness and careful planning. By the time we emerged from the most secretive regions of the jungle, it was clear that the island had imparted knowledge as much as it had threatened us. We had learned to read the signs, respect the hidden spaces, and navigate the unknown with care. Its secrets were vast, layered, and enduring, a reminder that the wilderness held dominion over those who dared to explore it. The jungle had tested us, shaped us, and revealed its mysteries, but only enough for us to survive and continue our journey. The moment we realized escape was possible, a wave of conflicting emotions hit us. Relief battled disbelief, hope clashed with lingering fear, and exhaustion weighed on every limb. The island had tested our physical limits and shattered our mental endurance, leaving scars that ran deeper than bruises or cuts. Every step toward freedom was heavy with caution, as the jungle seemed to resist even the idea of departure. The nightmare we had endured was far from over. Survival depended on navigating one final gauntlet. Paths that had seemed familiar now twisted in ways that disoriented us. Landmarks shifted subtly in the dim light, and even the clearest trails seemed deceptive. The island had a memory of our movements, as if reshaping itself to challenge us until the last possible moment. Mist and shadows clung to every corner, turning ordinary foliage into threatening forms. Each decision became a gamble, with consequences that could undo weeks of careful navigation. The sounds of the jungle were relentless, echoing behind us and ahead at the same time. Footfalls, distant cries, and the snapping of branches seemed orchestrated to unsettle, to remind us that the island was not passive. Fear became a constant companion, once again, a whisper in every step we took. Even when we thought the end of the jungle was near, the environment challenged our perception, making every clearing feel temporary, every slope dangerous. Hunger and fatigue gnawed at us, yet pressing forward was the only option. Supplies were nearly gone, and the muscles screamed with the cumulative strain of days spent climbing, waiting, and running. The balance between survival instincts and the limitations of our bodies was delicate. One misstep could be catastrophic. Every movement demanded concentration, as if the nightmare itself could punish weakness at any moment. We encountered natural obstacles that seemed designed to halt progress. Fallen trees blocked our paths, rivers surged unpredictably, and jagged cliffs forced detours that tested both courage and ingenuity. Even the simplest attempts at progress were complicated by the island's intricate defenses. It was as if the land itself refused to let us leave without a final trial, ensuring that the lessons of fear, vigilance, and respect were indelibly impressed upon us. At times, the mist thickened, obscuring the trail entirely. Visibility dropped to mere feet, and sounds became distorted echoes that played tricks on the mind. Shadows that had been static now seemed to follow, growing taller or disappearing at the corners of our vision. Panic threatened to overtake reason, but we pressed forward, guided by intuition, memory, and a shared will to survive. The nightmare was relentless, but our determination proved stronger than the terror. We discovered remnants of previous escape attempts, scattered and decayed, offering grim warnings. Broken shelters, tattered clothing, and skeletal remains told stories of desperation and failure. The island had claimed victims before us, and its memory of their struggles seemed embedded in the terrain. Each discovery reinforced the reality that survival was not guaranteed. The nightmare we endured was not unique, yet our resolve had to be unwavering. As night fell, darkness compounded every challenge. The moon offered limited guidance, casting distorted shadows that shifted with every movement. Strange calls echoed from deep within the jungle, some familiar, others utterly alien. Sleep was impossible, and even the most exhausted members of our group remained alert. Fear was no longer abstract. It had become tangible, pressing on every decision, every glance, every breath. We began improvising to overcome the obstacles in our path. Branches were used to probe uncertain ground. Makeshift rafts for treacherous streams and improvised lights guided our steps. Each adaptation was born from necessity, highlighting human ingenuity in the face of relentless adversity. The nightmare demanded creativity and resourcefulness, teaching lessons that extended far beyond survival itself. The psychological toll was immense. Memories of near-fatal mistakes haunted every step, while hallucinations blurred the line between reality and imagination. Shadows seemed alive, and the whispering wind carried voices we could not place. Maintaining clarity required conscious effort, as panic could easily result in injury or disorientation. The island's challenge was as much mental as it was physical, testing endurance on every conceivable level. We stumbled upon signs of civilization, a distant fire, the sound of running water channeled through structures, faint footprints of humans. Hope surged, tempered by caution. The nightmare had taught us to question everything. Even this apparent reprieve could be deceptive, yet it spurred renewed energy and determination. Every cautious step forward carried the promise of escape and the weight of weeks spent trapped in a hostile wilderness. We navigated the final stretch with meticulous care. Obstacles were approached with deliberate observation, and every movement was calculated to minimize risk. The balance between urgency and patience became critical. The nightmare of the island's hostility had forged a sharpened awareness, and we applied every lesson learned to overcome the last challenges in our path. Survival had become second nature, guided by fear, experience, and the shared goal of freedom. The jungle seemed to relent slightly as dawn approached. Light broke through the canopy, illuminating paths that had been obscured in darkness and fog. The oppressive presence that had shadowed our every step seemed less pronounced, yet we remained wary. Every instinct demanded vigilance until true safety was secured. The nightmare was ending, but the lessons and scars would linger indefinitely. We emerged onto open terrain, the sounds of the jungle fading behind us. Relief washed over the group, tempered by exhaustion and disbelief. The nightmare we had endured was now behind us. Physically, yet mentally and emotionally, it would remain. We had faced the island's hostility, confronted fear in every form, and survived when many had not. The journey from terror to escape had transformed us in ways we could scarcely articulate. As we reached the first signs of rescue, the reality of the experience set in. The ordeal was nearly unimaginable to those who had not been there. The island's secrets and dangers were almost impossible to convey. Yet surviving had required confronting every fear, respecting the wilderness, and trusting instincts honed under pressure. Escaping a nightmare no one believes had changed us forever, leaving a mixture of triumph, awe, and lingering terror that would remain for the rest of our lives. As we finally found our way back to the edge of the island, the jungle seemed to swallow our tracks, as if it wanted to erase every trace of what had happened. The terror, the unknown, and the relentless feeling of being hunted will stay with us forever. Some places, we realized, are meant to remain untouched, and some stories are meant to haunt those who dare to survive them. We escaped the island, but the memory of what waited in the shadows will never leave us.